Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I'm your host, Joey DeMeglio, and the Rangers have returned from the All-Star break and bye week looking strong and well-rested as they rattled off two straight at MSG against the Avalanche and Lightning. Both of those were very exciting games. Joining me today to talk about those two wins and the goalie situation is Anthony Pucik from 98.7 ESPN New York and Don LaGreca's podcast, The Game Misconduct. Anthony, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. How are you?
Joey, I'm good. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, no problem. I've been a fan of the Michael K show and the radio and the 98.7 since 1945.
Long
But
time, long time.
yeah. I go way back to like before when I was in like high school. I used to listen to you guys. How long have you been working at the station? Because you're pretty new to everything. I know Andrew used to be like the producer of the show, and now
Yep.
you produce the Michael K show, right?
Yeah. Andrew has left, and I produce now for now. It seems like 2 years, which is pretty
Okay.
crazy. But I've been with ESPN for, let's see, I got out of college in 2016. I was at ABC for a year and a half. Then after that, I jumped right to ESPN 98.7. So I've been there probably since like 2018. Ironically enough, we're actually 2018, interesting year. This is the anniversary day of the letter that the Rangers put out. So interesting that we're
Good
doing the
point.
podcast on a day
Yes.
like today.
Yes.
But yeah, since 2018, so it's been about 6-7 years here at 98.7 and about 2 years on the K show.
Awesome. Awesome. Did Justin Craig hire you? Was he the one that hired you?
No, I do know Justin though. Justin's a
Yeah.
great guy.
Yeah, he's a Bonaventure alum.
Well, listen, that
I'm going there right now. I'm actually going to graduate in a couple weeks for my master's in sports journalism. So I met him. He was like in my first class. He was one of the people that we got to spoke to in our master class. So I made a nice connection with him there.
well, all the best to you, but go Rams.
Oh,
You know, we're Michael and I are Fordham guys, so you know how that goes.
gotcha. Yeah. How long have you been a Rangers fan though? Because I know you are like you talk about the Rangers like whenever you get the opportunity, but I mean
hmm
hockey is not talked about too often on the K show or on the radio, just because it's not as popular as like the other sports. But how
Well,
long have you been following the team?
I would say this. I think our show, the K show, does a great job, one of the best, and our station does a great job with guys like Rick DiPietro and Alan Hahn. We have the best hockey group of the New York sports radio stations, in my opinion. And I'd love to talk about it more. And when the playoffs come, we'll definitely be all over it. We were at the NHL store a couple months ago.
Yeah.
We're at the show's out at UBS today for Islanders Lightning. So our relationships with the Rangers and Islanders are really strong there. But as far as being a fan, I'd say since birth, but we all know that's not exactly right. But I can remember for as long as I know, I must have watched the Rangers '94 Cup video no less than 200 times when I was
Right.
a kid. And
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I am the unfortunate '94 baby to say I was never alive for a cup. The Rangers won in June. I was born in August, so I still have not seen a Rangers Stanley Cup. And even if I wasn't conscious for it, I still haven't been alive for one. So I've been a Rangers fan for as long as I can remember. Hockey's been my favorite sport for as long as I can remember. I was fortunate when I was at Fordham to cover the team for a year. I covered them and covered Game 7 against the Lightning that they lost in painful fashion with McDonough's broken foot and
Oh
the
yeah.
offense just not being there for them in that moment, and another depressing loss for Hank. I've been through a lot as a fan, and then of course now as a professional with this team, and it's been a lot of fun. And I love hockey. I think it's a really exciting sport, and I'm really excited that ESPN is a part of uh, the NHL again because I think it's good for just exposure in general. And I think we do a great job of promoting the sport. And hopefully, with the continued partnership with ESPN, we'll see a lot more hockey on the
Mhm.
airwaves.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you brought up like DiPietro, Alan Hahn, all those guys. Scott Seidenberg too. Whenever he shows up on the radio to fill in for people, he talks about hockey. I remember he was talking about that Hurricane series a couple years ago when the Rangers made their conference finals run.
You know a lot of people, Joey. Got Scott
I
Seidenberg's name on there.
Yeah. Like I said, I've been a fan since 1945. You thought I was joking?
No, that is down the list. That is quite the roster. So yeah, you're a huge fan.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah. I love all of Don's rants. Like I quote them like I'm watching a movie. I love those things.
Oh,
Did he ever get his cough button? By the way, I know he was complaining about that. What was it?
we
Punch
are
through
working
over.
on it. We are
Okay.
working on we are working on getting him the cough button.
Yeah.
We had
Awesome.
a
Yeah.
lot of old equipment that we got to switch out.
Hmm.
Pandemic was a busy time for us for sure.
Yeah. So he does the show from home too, right? Like he doesn't have to come into the studio anymore.
Yeah, we do. We have the benefit of, thankfully, Yes has been kind enough to send over enough equipment for the guys to be able to simulcast the show just as well at home as they do here at the studio. But more often than not, the guys are here or they're out on remote like they are today. But it's nice to have that studio set up where, on the off chance that the guys do need to be home, they have the opportunity to do so. And
Hmm.
me and Don usually record his podcast when he's home. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask next.
Mhm.
Like, how do you guys do that? You guys do it like over Zoom or something?
Yeah, we do
Between-
it. He connects to the studio, like he would any other time, and then
Yeah.
I'm here usually by 11. We'll record sometime around noon, 1 o'clock. You'll notice where we don't really get to the 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock waiver news for the day because it hasn't happened by the time we post it.
Yeah.
And then of course we got to get ready for the show, so
Yeah.
we'll do it
Yeah.
around then.
Yeah. I've been following Don for a while and like the Game Misconduct show. So like listening to you, I was like, oh wait, who's Anthony? I didn't know this. And then I found out you were the you produced the Michael K show now. What is that? What is that like producing that show? It's one of the top radio shows in the country. A lot of people love that show. I mean, I listen all the time. Like I told you before, when I'm
Mhm.
delivering food, I talk about this on the podcast all the time about my family's pizzeria and how I used to tell pizza stories all the time. Not so much anymore, but like what is that like producing that show like?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, Michael, Don, and Peter, all three of them are great to work with. I came into a show that was very successful. They're three of the best at what they do, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Every day's an adventure in a good way. There's never a shortage of things to talk about in New York in all the sports. As we know, we've had quite the football season here in New York, and and now we have the hockey season, and the Knicks are keeping themselves busy today on deadline day. There'll be plenty to talk about, and of course, we're out on at UBS Arena on NBA trade deadline day, and we
Hmm.
might have some just for the listeners to your show here, might have some special guests that you haven't heard yet that might be popping up on the show if you're a fan of New York sports. So it'll be a
Okay.
fun show to tune into today. But it is great to work with them. I love working with them. It's never boring. It's always fun. Uh, get to talk sports for a living and get paid
Yeah.
to do it. It's a pretty blessed to be honest. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
The guests that you guys get on are always great. Like you guys are able to get Valaket on and
Oh
like
yeah.
you could get I think you've had Mark Messier on.
Yep.
Has James Dolan gone? I don't know if James Dolan has, but I know in the
Dolan
past the
famously
GMs
was
have
in
gone on.
studio once. James Dolan was famously in studio in our old studios.
That's right.
That was
A long
quite
time ago.
the interview. But
Hmm.
that's just thanks to our great partnership with MSG and our partners there. Our partners at ESPN allow us to get Kevin Weeks on and Mark Messier and John Buccigross and all those guys. And it's just great. And these guys know them for so long, just being in the New York market and then being in ESPN. We get to establish a relationship with them. Hopefully, we can get Valley on soon.
Yeah.
I'd love to talk to him about what's going on between the pipes because he's been very opinionated on the post game and has not been
Hmm.
shy about it and on Twitter, and the stats back him up as well.
Yep. And his stats too, like the clear sight
That's right,
analytics
CSA
thing.
hockey.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, those are all good people, great people that you've mentioned. Like Weeksy, I love talking to that guy. He's incredible.
Yeah.
He's awesome as like an insider too, because
Yes.
everything he does is fresh. It's like instead of just tweeting, like he'll take a video and it's like
Yep.
behind the scenes, like he's just learning about it. So we get to like get in his shoes. I love
Yeah.
that about Weeksy.
Weeksy's definitely trying to become that insider for ESPN for hockey, and I
Yeah.
appreciate it because
Hmm.
when you have guys like Woj and Schefter and the other sports breaking stuff instantaneously, you don't want to be the guy that only gets it 5 minutes before the press release comes out from the team, which is what a lot of the NHL insiders do.
Yeah.
Weeksy seems to have the pulse on some teams where he can get some stuff a little earlier, and it's really awesome, and he has a great personality about it too. So it makes it good, and that's another thing that's going to allow hockey to get to that next level
Hmm.
and be that sport that everybody's interested in because you got to draw the interest and you've got to be interesting not only on social media but in your content. And I think
Hmm.
Weeks is great at that.
Yeah. Last question for like about the K show and before we
Sure.
transition to the Rangers. the drops that you guys get. How do you guys get them so quickly? It's crazy. Like you hear it in one like a minute before, and then the next minute it's like Griffin from Connecticut's like soundbite is already up there. How do you edit it that quickly?
Yeah, we have a system. We have essentially a skimmer that we have that allows us to take about a minute or 30 seconds off of whatever's going on the air, and it pops up into, in our case, Adobe Audition or whatever audio software that we'll use. We can cut it up instantaneously, and our software system, it repopulates pretty quickly after that, and we can get it up in about, like you said, 30 seconds to a minute.
It's
But
insane.
it takes the ear for it. You got to know what's going to be funny and what's going to be a miss. I'm still learning the best way to do it. But like you said, when you have guys like Griffin or Richard from Manhattan, you know that there's going to be something great that they say on a given day. So it's pretty obvious sometimes what you have to do for a drop.
Yeah, yeah, some great callers there. I remember transitioning to the Rangers. Now I remember someone called Lafreniere got off to a really good start this year,
Mm-hmm.
and someone was I could tell he was trying to get Don to go off on a rant on the Rangers.
Yeah.
He called Lafreniere soft, and like if you said that before the start of the season, I would have agreed. But like now, you really can't say that. It was kind of funny seeing how Don like responded to that. He told him to like get lost pretty much. And I always say like Don, you have to give us a Rangers rant. Like you've ranted about the Knicks and the Nets and the Mets plenty of times before, the Jets, the Giants, like you have to give us a Rangers rant. And he's like, I don't know when that's coming, man. Like man, but Lafreniere though, what have you thought about him so far this season?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think Lafreniere's been fantastic. Again, going back to Valaquette's advanced stats, he's one of the most unlucky players in the league right now in terms of what his anticipated goals should be. Last time I looked, I think it was -8 or -9 goals expected, and we've seen those chances, Joey. You watch the games where there's a shot wide open that he just misses, or an unbelievable save in that Kings game that would have tied it up and given them
Yeah.
a chance to get an extra point before the break. But then he scores that amazing goal in overtime against Colorado, and you go, "Wow, that's the first overall pick that we expected. That's the type of player that we expected." He's been playing hard. He seems to have found a rhythm with Trocheck and Panarin, which has been great. And I think for people to say he's soft, I can see where people are coming from in the sense that he wasn't reaching the expectation everybody thought, but he also wasn't afforded the opportunities of a Jack Hughes or a Nico Hischier, where they played 20 minutes a night in New Jersey almost right away after they got drafted because that team was not expected to go anywhere. And they were going to build these two kids and those two be the centerpieces, and it worked out for them. And it seems to
Mhm.
have worked out for them. They're both great players. Kako and Lafreniere maybe averaged 12 minutes in their first two seasons, and they were sitting on the third line because Artemi Panarin came, and you already had Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider and plenty of other guys that filled out that top six that you knew were going to contribute for you right away. Now, not saying that they don't have that, they still do, but now it's time for those guys to step up. Kako's been hurt, unfortunately, so he kind of had to take a little bit of a step back. Alexis Lafreniere has answered the bell, been that top six forward the Rangers need this year, and has been part of, quite frankly, the most consistent line they've had.
Mhm.
Um, I've been very impressed with his play of late and all season, and I have no reason to believe that he's not going to find the back of the net more often than not in the second half.
Mhm. Yeah, I always thought those guys, Lafreniere and Kako, since the beginning of this, before the beginning of the season, I always thought of them as like secondary complementary scoring pieces when they really needed to be like those primary point
Yeah,
getters. Most of their points are come from even strength because they get no power play time because that top unit is stacked
yeah,
and they get the goals all the time. Um, I remember Don was saying like, maybe the Rangers could think about well before this season, in the off season, he was saying maybe the Rangers think about moving Lafreniere. Now it almost seems like that decision could be applied to Kako, who hasn't
yeah.
really found his game yet. I mean, since the injury, he hasn't been the same. Do you feel the same way?
Joey, I would disagree if the Rangers didn't necessarily tell you that, because the way that they treat him in the sense of whenever they need a big goal, they double shift Panarin. Who comes off the line? Capo Caco. Who seems to always find himself at the back end of the bench in the second or third period when the Rangers are down and he's playing third line, fourth line minutes? It's Caco. And Laviolette says that he's liked his game and he thought he's played well, but he seems to be the odd man out more often than not. And when you take a look at what Hedel, Lafreniere, and Kaka were going to cost in terms of giving them extensions, you weren't going to be able to keep everybody. The cap did not go up the way the Rangers expected, whether it be because of COVID, whether it be because of all of the factors that have led to the cap not being as high as everybody thought it would be at this point. The Rangers have to be careful with their money, and they got to be careful with who they pay. And if they don't think that Capo Caco is worth a 2 to 3 year, $4 to $5 million extension, much like Pavel Buchnevich, they're going to have to move on. And at the present moment, last year, as you know, Kako had a great goal scoring year, and you thought that's the guy, as you said, they're going to hold on to. Now Lafreniere is firmly entrenched with Trocheck and Panarin. Kako's still finding his legs. And unfortunately, if the Rangers don't want to give up a lot of draft capital or prospects, Kako is a piece that they can dangle to get that right winger, to get that center, to possibly improve their decor. So it's almost essentially, I don't necessarily think that they should get rid of him, but they're almost telling you, the way they're playing him, they're okay if they move on.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. But I said last week that, having that cheap middle six winger is it's nice to have,
Sure.
especially like with how the cap is constrained. It's gonna go up a little bit. I think $3 or $3.5 million this offseason, but the Rangers still have guys that are under contract that have big contracts like Goudreau and Trouba, Kreider, those guys, and it's pretty difficult to move those guys. And I don't know why they would do it based on how they're playing. You think they go after like a top line guy right now or improve the bottom six?
Well, if you ask the bottom six from last night, Jimmy Vesey takes offense to that because he said that he likes the way that bottom six has been playing. It really just depends, Joey, on who's on the market, right? Like Elias Lindholm would have been a guy I think the Rangers would have been interested in and reportedly were interested in. He's now gone. He's in Vancouver. Sean Monahan is now part of the Winnipeg Jets. Do you really want to spend a ton on a guy that you're probably going to use as a rental? Like, are they going to go through another Cop Vetrano rental trade deadline where they think they're competitive enough to be a cup contender and then trade away first round picks or prospects that they necessarily don't want to part with for a guy you may not be able to re-sign? It probably makes more sense for them to go after, I would say, like a Vetrano or a Tarasenko, the money or what you have to give up has to make sense, right? You don't want to be giving up, Perot. You don't want to be giving up Othman or first round picks. In my opinion, in this trade market, I don't see anybody right now that I say you have to get this guy because he's going to put you over the top. And over the last 2 games, the Rangers have played relatively well as opposed to the last 24 where they've been a 500 team. They look a lot better defensively than they have in the past 24 games coming out of this break against 2 pretty good teams. I'm not saying that they don't need to do something. I'm sure they will do something. I just don't know if it's going to be that home run trade that everybody's anticipating. Plus, I don't think they necessarily need it. They have their top 6. The bottom 6 has played well. They're not going to get a lot of scoring out of them, but Jimmy Vesey's got double-digit goals. You take a look at some of the guys, Joey, that are really buoying this team or have been real nice contributors. Gustafsson earlier in the season, Vesey now, and Jonathan Quick, they'd make very little money. Chris Drury's done a nice job with very little money in finding guys that are big contributors to this team. So I'm sure he's going to make a move. I'm sure it'll be for a winger. I don't think a center is going to be there. I think Johnny Brodzinski has kind of solidified himself as a guy who wants to stay in this lineup. I was just talking with the guys at WFUV up at Fordham last week saying, I don't know if he's the third line center. Well, he heard me last night with a very important goal that he scored. So I could see them going for a winger or a defenseman, but I'm not sure they're going to go for that big splash.
Yeah, I agree with you on Brodzinski. I didn't know if he could be like a player in the NHL, but
I agree.
I gave him credit for sticking out all those reassignments and stuff. And, he got a huge, like you said, a big goal last night. I think if he adds a little bit of scoring, if he's able to he's got a good shot. If he's able to score on more of those shots that he takes, that would be a good third line center, I would say. But right now, I only view him as like a fourth line player just because of his speed. I think the Rangers could still make an acquisition there. But it is what we've seen from the Lindholm and the Monahan trades. Those guys are getting hefty returns, first round picks, good prospects. Like this is a seller's market right now. So Chris Drury has been very good about holding on to his best assets. The best assets he's given up at the deadline have been like a first round pick and like Morgan Barron. Like those are the biggest guys that he's given up. So like I could see like like a Zach Jones that they could give up. I don't see him giving up an Othman or Pro because I don't see
No.
that many good options out there, like and that are worth that he
Yeah,
sees that are worth that.
right. Certainly not for a rental. If we're talking about a trade that's off the wall, no one saw coming, that somebody wants to move on from somebody that we don't know is on the radar, and it's actually like a guy who's under contract for 2 to 3 years, and you think this is going to be an integral piece to a team that thinks within this window that they signed Laviolette they're going to win a Stanley Cup. Yes, I don't see that happening, which is why I feel like it's going to be one of those ancillary trades. Do they try and move on from the Goudreau contract? I think they like him. I know Twitter isn't in love with him, but
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a contract they're necessarily willing to move right now, or they'll get a good return for. That's why Kakko is so interesting, because if he's going to be that third line winger, and it's a guy that people think I could fix you, I could change you, and you maybe get a little bit more out of that than giving up picks or a prospect, maybe the Rangers go that direction, and it wouldn't necessarily kill them. I agree with you about Brodzinski. I think even the TNT broadcast last night was talking about it, saying that he would be a great fourth liner just because of his speed and the way he plays now Hardy. And remember, this is not a very fast team. This Rangers team is not. You can see it against Nathan McKinnon. They do have issues against very fast players and fast opponents. So having a guy like Brodzinski is key. But he could also, you could swap him down to the fourth line and he'd still be just as effective. And it would just make that fourth line stronger. So I wouldn't say don't go get a third line center if you think you can get one for the right price, just so Brodzinski could stay there. It's a good problem to have if you have too many talented people in your top 12.
Yeah, as we've seen, there's been injuries this year, so if another one happens, you could just plug Brodzinski in there, and that's a good thing to have. Or if someone's struggling, like I know in the beginning of the year, they would go back and forth between VZ and Pitlick before VZ solidified himself in the lineup. But I mean, all this talk about the trade deadline brings me to my next point about like your overall thoughts on the team. There was people saying like, all right, this team's not good enough to win because of that rough, really rough January that they had. And it was really a 2 month stretch of mediocre hockey. What do you think coming out of the break? Very small sample size, only 2 games to this point as of Thursday. But what have you thought? I think the defense has looked a lot better, especially against Tampa Bay. They were keeping stuff to the outside. I think they were limiting the rush chances against, which was a huge problem. But overall, what have you thought about them in those 2 games since the break?
Yeah, well, Joey, the one goal they gave up was a neutral zone turnover, right? I think it was Gustafsson, and then gave it up in the middle, and then Nikita Kucherov's line just does what they do, which is score goals because they're just dynamic, and that's what you saw a lot in those 24 games before the break. The Rangers have done, and credit to Jonathan Quick as well. The issue the Rangers had in those 24 games where they went about 500 was they were giving up a lot of high scoring chances, and those chances were going in the back of the net. Jonathan Quick has done a nice job. He didn't get overly tested last night, but in Colorado and in Ottawa, where that game could have got out of hand in Ottawa, he did a really good job of limiting the high danger scoring chances from getting in the back of the net.
Yeah.
If the Rangers play better defense and their goalies are playing well, Jonathan Quick or Igor Shesterkin, they're going to win a lot of games. It was encouraging to see these 2 games because it's not like this team changed all that much. Where did that hot start go? Where was the 1-3-1 that Laviolette implemented so well that they were able to shut down pretty much any team that they faced? And then all of a sudden it went away. And that's a pretty big sample size. Dom's talked about it a lot. 24 games is not, it's a little blip. So if the Rangers have that 24-game stretch that they had in February and January and December, I should say, in the playoffs, they'll be out.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to pinpoint where this team is at. I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think you're going to see a little more consistency from this team down the stretch now. I don't think you're going to see that January, December malaise, but I could see a game where they get into that mode. It's hard not to. It's an 82-game season. But I see this team being a playoff contender. I still think they can win the Metro. I think Carolina would give them a ton of problems, but they've played well against Boston when they've been playing their best. They've played well against Toronto, and they've also lost against Toronto. So I think that this Rangers team could beat anybody. I also think they could lose to anybody. And that's a scary position to be in, which is why you're hearing Drury looking to try and improve this team, because he does think there's something missing, and there is something that they could do to make it better.
Yeah. And they pulled the plug on Nick Bonino. Like
Yes.
they saw that he wasn't as effective. They brought him in hoping that he would shore up the bottom 6 or the fourth line. And he was played out of position because of the injuries to Hedel and like Kakko. So, I mean, he kind of wore off quickly, even though he was blocking a bunch of shots, and he was really good defensively, winning faceoffs and stuff. So they see that as, Drury saw this cannot
Yes.
stay. We have to make an improvement here. So I'm interested to see like where he go, if he even applies that same logic to like Blake Wheeler, who, in my opinion, I think he struggled. I don't think he's got the leg speed anymore. But I mean, the veteran presence. How do you weigh that? Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, but take a look at where he is right now. He's on that top line with
Yep.
Zibanejad and Kreider, right? So that's the other part, Joey. You're taking a look at. I agree. I don't think Wheeler is the player that he used to be in Winnipeg, where he was scoring 30 to 40 goals a season. He's clearly lost a step. But you know what? Is he a defensive liability? Maybe from a speed perspective. He has played better as of late. I think he did get off to a pretty slow start. But again, this was a pretty reasonable, cheap contract for Drury to sign and say, let me take a flyer on this guy. And I think he's probably comfortable with moving on from him if he absolutely has to. But you have to say, who is that player that's going to take his place? Is it going to be Kakko? Are we going to bring in somebody like Frank Vetrano or another winger that's going to fill that role? Because you could easily say, let's move on. But as you've seen, while the guys who have come up from Hartford have done a nice job, I don't think Othman's necessarily ready yet. I don't think they have a ton of depth, NHL-ready depth in Hartford to say, let's move on from Blake Wheeler and let's just call somebody else up. I guess you could give VC a shot there, but I like his role in the fourth line. I'm all for saying that we need to tend to change things up. And, Peter Laviolette spoke glowingly about Nick Bonino before they put him on waivers. They really just did right by him. They said, we're probably not going to be playing you. We're going to send you down. If you don't want to get sent down, we'll let you go find a home. And there's value to that as well from a outsider perspective, that Drury takes care of his players and the Rangers take care of you if things aren't going right and you want to go in a different direction. I think Blake Wheeler could be better, but again, he's making $750,000. One of Drury's under $1 million deals has not exactly panned out.
Yeah.
But he has played better of recent. I do think that they can improve. Obviously, right wing one. It's just a matter of how.
You brought up Vetrano and Twitter earlier. Fans really want him back badly. The Vetrano. I mean, I keep seeing every time I log in, I just keep seeing like, bring back Vetrano, announce Vetrano. Like, I mean, I would certainly be a fan of that, because also he's got 2 years left. This is not like just a rental, so he'd probably be one of those pieces you were talking about where he's got control and he's still young. I think he's 28 or 29 years old. So this is this could be like a core move, and I don't know if the Rangers would be willing to move like Kakko for that. I don't know if that would be worth it.
Well,
I think personally, I think that would be a mistake, moving Kakko for Vetrano, like straight up, unless you're getting something else back in that deal.
Yeah, definitely not straight up. I agree. We know that Vetrano has had success here. We know that he was a great playoff performer. Those are both things that you wonder, can a player succeed in New York? And when the lights are brightest in the playoffs, will he come through? Vetrano's checked both those boxes. So that's a guy that, if I bring him in, I kind of know what I'm getting, and I know that he could be an asset to the team. That is a positive. What is the price? Which is the question that you always have to ask yourself. And like you said, Kakko for Vetrano, I think Kakko's ceiling is a little higher. I think you know what Frank Vetrano is. You know what he could bring. But is Frank Vetrano going to be the major difference between the Rangers making it to the Eastern Conference Final and the Stanley Cup? I'm not so sure. And can Kakko reach a level that Frank Vetrano did, where he finds his game again, he gets strong in front of the net, and he scores some goals for this team in key moments? I could see that as well. It's just a matter of, can they weigh how much Kakko's played and how much time they have before the deadline to say, you know what, we're going to give this a shot. Kakko will find himself on that top line again. Blake Wheeler will drop down to line 3 or line 4, maybe even out of the lineup altogether, and we'll see where it goes from there. But a guy like Frank Vetrano, you know him. A guy like Matt Zuccarello, you know him. A guy like Ryan Strome, you know him. But just bring back the 2012 Rangers while we're at it. What's Ryan McDonough doing these days? But
Callahan.
Right, Callahan. Yeah, he's. I think he's also working for ESPN. But you just ask yourself, what's the price and how is it going to affect my long-term goals? Because as much as this team is in a short-term window to make a cup run with this roster, with the goalies that they have, you also have to think about, am I going to mortgage my future for a team that just went on a 12-1 run in the middle of the season and say one guy's going to make the difference? This team is good enough to win any series against any team. It's just a matter of how consistent they could be. And does Vetrano automatically wash all that away? I wouldn't say so, no.
I still think we haven't seen the best of like Zibanejad and Kreider. I think Zibanejad needs to. He hasn't found that goal scoring touch like he
Yep.
had in 2019, 2020. If he could find that like that last hot streak within him, but I'm not saying like score from now until the end of the season like that, but find some sort of confidence in his shot because I feel like he's passing up a lot of opportunities to shoot to
Well,
defer to either Wheeler or Kreider.
well, Joey, I'll tell you what, if you want a nice cold take, what I would say is I wouldn't be surprised if we see 93 and 20 split up a little bit. I know that everybody loves them. I know they hug after every win, and it's fantastic, and they're best friends, and that's great. I think Chris Kreider can provide exactly what he does on the top line on the third line. If Mika Zibanejad is always going to defer to him or to somebody else, he needs to find a shot again, like you said. The power play one, by the way, has struggled a little bit not only coming out of the break, but even before the break. They were passing too much. They weren't getting a lot of clean shots on the net. That's very concerning. Chris Kreider hasn't scored his patented goals right in front of the net. Pucks haven't gotten there. Zibanejad, people are kind of reading him like Ovechkin now. They're going to put him in. He's going to be at that circle. He's going to try and shoot. You're seeing it now on 5-on-5 that's where he's going. He's a more dynamic player than that, but 100%. And when they were struggling, it was something I suggested to Don. Do you think 93 and 20 split up? Will Cooley has played very well. He provides a strong body. He could be that Kreider for Zibanejad's line. But again, it's kind of a moot point when Hedo's not coming back. Wheeler isn't exactly lighting it up, and Kakko's been, injured and trying to get himself back to get his sea legs under him. If there were 9 guys that you can kind of interchange, keeping that Trocheck line together, of course, I would be a little more willing to do this. I just don't know who would you be putting Zibanejad with. If you had, yes, Will Cooley, okay. But Will Cooley, Blake Wheeler, and Mika Zibanejad, I don't really know if that does anything for me. Johnny Brodzinski and Chris Kreider together, that's something I could sink my teeth into. That's kind of interesting. But then do you put Wheeler there and you move Kakko up, and Zibanejad kind of is flanked by 2 kids, 2 very energetic guys that kind of do all the dirty work, and he can kind of be that guy in the middle. Like, you are the shooter. This is your line to shoot. We need you to shoot or create for these guys when they have the opportunity. It'd be interesting to me. I think it's going to happen. That would be my ice cold take. But in my mind, that's what I would like to see if those guys can't perform still, because I call the top line now the Trocheck line. To me, that's been the most consistent line this year. And again, Kreider could still be on power play 1. Just putting him on the third line does not mean he's going to get demoted out of everything. Put him on power play 1 where he strives the most. If you saw it last night on TNT, Kreider had essentially a 2-on-1, and he tried to back pass to Wheeler when he had a chance to shoot. He's got a good shot. He could have shot between the circles there and made Vasilevsky work a little bit, and it almost led to a turnover and a goal. They're just kind of second guessing themselves. I think the confidence is coming back for this whole team, but I'd love to see it more from 93 and 20.
Yeah, I agree. And we're at the Ice Cold Take segment. If you're listening at home, watching on YouTube, watching on Millions, the stream, Ice Cold Take is a noun, an accurate statement backed by facts and observations.
Oh, look at this. I like that.
That is solid in nature, similar to a block of ice, i.e. spot on claim. I have to submit a petition to put this in like Webster's dictionary.
Absolutely. They put everything in there now. You got it.
Yeah. At least put it on Urban Dictionary. That too. Like that.
Yeah.
You got to put it on there.
That's where people look more anyway.
Yeah. I like that. I like that about, splitting up Kreider and Zibanejad. But I like how you said it too. Like, not just, switch the centers, because that's how I felt. I felt like just switch Kreider or not Kreider, Zibanejad and Trocheck. But I know you would split up that line. That's a good idea.
I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to.
I agree. I see what you're saying. Yeah. And I think like Cooley and like Kreider have like they play a similar style, and then like putting Brodzinski with Kreider, that would be it would be a good compliment. I like the idea of switching Zibanejad and Trocheck because Kreider has worked well with Trocheck in the past, and I feel like he plays more to his style, like the style that he needs to be playing, which is get behind the net, use his body, get to the pucks first, retrieve it for everybody, the other people on the line, like for Trocheck or whoever the right wing and whoever the right winger is. I like that because he plays to his strengths. And then Zibanejad too. Panarin likes to distribute, so Zibanejad kind of forced to shoot. But I don't know if he would buy into his shot.
Well, I think that what you said, Joey, is a testament to Trocheck, right? Because it seems like he plays well with everybody. And so does Zibanejad.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from him either. They're both great facilitators. I think Trocheck does play a little harder, as you kind of hinted at, whereas Zibanejad is a little bit more skilled. Now, granted, Rick DiPietro's mentioned that it's amazing that Zibanejad hasn't won a Selke yet because of how good he is defensively. Now, he's good with his stick. He's not that hard-nosed, like, rough and tough center. Trocheck can kind of get in your face a little bit more, which is fine. But it's just a matter of, and look, maybe at some point they will, because that line, the Trocheck line's been great. If they ever take a dip, I mean, we've seen it. We saw it during that stretch where Trocheck played with Kreider a little bit and Zibanejad was playing with Panarin, and they kind of shook up the lines a little bit. It would be so much easier, Joey, if Hedl wasn't out for the year.
Yeah.
Because the way Hedl played last year, you could say, I'm going to move Hedl up to that top line with Kreider, and I'm going to move Zibanejad down. Like, you would have been able to do that a lot better. And I'm not, again, Johnny Brodzinski's played very well, but I'd feel a lot better if it was Hedl that I was shaking up and down than somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll get into my ice cold take. I have two. So I think for me, Zach Jones is going to be the biggest asset the Rangers give up at this trade deadline.
Okay.
I don't know. I know the reports about James Dolan saying that he wants the Rangers to keep their first round pick because the draft is at the Sphere in Las Vegas. That's his. I think it's crazy. I think it's hilarious. But I could see Zach Jones being the guy that they ship out, which it's a shame too, because I like the player. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's not like a scrub out there. He provides a lot offensively.
Sure.
Defensively, he could make an improvement. But I don't see him cracking a lineup on the squad like currently. I think he's like in the realm of Niels Lundqvist from last year, where it's like he hasn't carved out a role. My other ice cold take is that if Zibanejad doesn't like catch fire, like scoring goals, I don't think the Rangers are going to win this year. Like the only way I see the Rangers winning this season is if he could regain that scoring touch that he had. Like, I know he's getting points and stuff. He's producing like a first line, like a top center, but it just hasn't felt the same. If he could find that touch of goal scoring that he once had, like when he scored almost 40 last year and then almost 50 in the COVID year, then I feel a lot more confident in the Rangers.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good take by you, Joey. And I would add this too. I think Igor Shesterkin is very important to the Rangers' success here. And I know that Jonathan Quick has played very well, but he is 38 years old. And if the Rangers want to get to where they want to get to, they're going to need both Mika Zibanejad and Igor Shesterkin to be at the top of their game.
Mm-hmm.
That's not only scoring power play goals for Mika Zibanejad. That's not only distributing the puck to Chris Kreider and Will Cooley or Blake Wheeler or whoever it is that's going to be on that line with him. And for Igor, that's getting to the level that Jonathan Quick is at right now. Can you stop those breakaways when they need to be stopped? Mm-hmm. Can you stop those high danger chances? Granted, they are high danger, but Igor Shesterkin is one of the best goalies in the National Hockey League and one of the best players in the league at the position. He has not played that way for quite some time, and everyone knows his confidence is something that gets in his way sometimes. When things kind of spiral out of control, he does not recover very well. He seems to be on board with this reset that the Rangers have agreed to do with him. We'll see who starts on Friday in Chicago. But I think that if the Rangers want to get to where they want to go, Jonathan Quick's not going to be playing 27 games in the playoffs. Igor Shesterkin is going to have to be playing a majority of them. It's nice to have Quick, and Pierre Laviolette's mentioned that. It's a good problem to have, but you also have to know who your best goalie is. And they say Igor's their number one. He has to be their number one again.
Yeah, perfect way to wrap up like this episode, like to have that last topic in, because I forgot to put it in here.
It's what we do. We just tie it all together.
Yeah. No loose ends. Shesterkin and Quick, like the goalie situation. Do you think like from here on out for the rest of the season, it's going to be like a 50-50 split, or is this just temporary until the Rangers feel that Shesterkin finds his game? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joey. I have no reason to not believe what Peter Laviolette's saying, and I have no reason to believe what Igor Shesterkin's saying. He said that this was a plan. Igor was going to go into the film room with Benoit Allaire, one of the greatest goaltender coaches in the National Hockey League, and take a look at what's been going on and what's wrong, because there are some clear issues with his game. Valaketa said it, that his glove side high is bad, and it's never been that way. He seems to be tracking hard pucks really easily, and then pucks that he should be stopping with relative ease, he's not. that's a concern. That's either not being in position, not having confidence in where you are, and a multitude of things. Jonathan Quick, and again, the Rangers need these games. Very quietly, Carolina has climbed themselves up in the rankings here. So they need to start winning some of these games. It was great they won these two, and Quick was a major reason for it because while he wasn't tested a lot, there were some big saves that he had to make. And I thought to myself watching, would Igor have made that save? Because I don't know. At the moment, I know he can, but at the moment, I'm not sure. 50-50, I wouldn't say 50-50. I think over time, eventually, you're going to once again see Igor Shesterkin take over this net and play a majority of games at a point in this season. And I think at some point you're going to see him go back to who he was. Not saying he's the .950 save percentage Vezina Trophy winner, but a guy who can stop most of the shots that are in front of him, give up less than 3 goals a game, and give this team a very good chance to win. And as you said, Joey, brilliantly before, this defense has played much better in these 2 games. And while Quick has been good when he's needed to be, that's a big factor too. And if they play that way in front of Igor in Chicago, if he plays, I'm sure that we would see a similar result where the Rangers would come out on top, giving up very few goals with Igor in net.
All right. Yeah. Well, let's hope that Shesterkin regains that form. Maybe not as good as that Vezina winning season, but good enough in the playoffs last year, let's say. Let's hope as fans that he could reach that level again.
Absolutely. They have to.
Yeah. I think it's a good way to end it here. Anthony, I really appreciate you coming on. It was great talking to you. I know you got to go, so I'm going to end the stream here.
All right. Thanks, Joey. Appreciate it, man.